What's up guys? Today we've got the successor to Sony's best 4K Blu-ray player, the X800 Mark II. See, it's got an M2 at the end there. What makes this so different than the original X800 Mark I, you ask? Well, besides Dolby Vision support, doesn't look like much else. Well, let's get it hooked up, go over a few settings, and see what's new. But before we get into it, if you want to keep up on the latest and greatest on audio and video gear, then hit the subscribe button for new weekly videos. Alright, let's get this thing unboxed. Inside, we get two free 4K Blu-rays, Into the Spider-Verse and Jumanji. Both of them have Dolby Vision. Here's the remote control, the batteries, and the manuals. The X800M2 retails for $300. If you're familiar with the original X800, everything you see here should look exactly the same. Around front, you have the eject and power buttons on the right edge, along with a USB input behind a drop-down cover. On the left side is the Sony logo imprinted on the drop-down door. Around back, we get a LAN input, two HDMI outs, with the second HDMI dedicated for audio only, and a coax digital output. Build quality is just like the original X800. It measures your standard 17 inches wide by 2 inches high by 10.5 inches deep. It's also still one of the more heavier players out there, weighing 8 pounds. It's made mostly of plastic with a distinct pebbled texture. So hookup is very simple. Just plug in an HDMI cable and you're good to go. This will be hooked up to a Sony X900F television set, which is Dolby Vision capable. Now when you power it up, you'll be greeted with the language selection. Here you can choose the quick startup. If you choose on, you can turn it on using the network from an app or from a home automation system. This here is a reminder to use a high quality HDMI cable. After this, just pick your Wi-Fi network if you're going wireless. It should only take about a minute or so to connect. Once you're connected, click agree so you can use the built-in apps. After that, you'll be taken to the home screen. Here you have options for disk, USB, network playback, and setup, which we're going to take a look at. First thing we're going to do is check for an update over the internet. And of course we have one. So we're going to go from 0.0046 to 0050. Click start and this whole process should take about 10 to 15 minutes depending on your network speed. Okay, back over to setup. Here we have some accessibility settings. Here's the screen settings. Bravia On will turn off Dolby Vision and set upscaling to Auto 1. You can turn it on if your TV isn't Dolby Vision capable, but mine is, so I kept it off. HDR output should be set to auto if you want to keep Dolby Vision working. Here's the infamous Dolby Vision toggle. Remember, this player doesn't turn on automatically with Dolby Vision movies, so you will have to manually turn it on or off, depending on whether or not the movie has Dolby Vision. It's kind of a nuisance, I know, but it is what it is. For display type, choose TV or projector. Output resolution, I kept this on auto. 24p output, I put this on auto for all. Now for 4K upscaling, if you have this connected to a Sony 4K TV, the player will upscale lower resolution content to 1080p and keep 1080 at 1080 straight to the TV. For Auto 2 with a Sony TV, the player will upscale everything to 4K, and keeping it off will not upscale anything. Now if you have a non-Sony TV, then both Auto 1 and Auto 2 will upscale everything to 4K. Color space and deep color, I kept on auto. Noise reduction for streaming, I kept this off. 3D setting, you can keep it on auto if you have a 3D TV set, otherwise it won't really do anything for you. TV type is 16:9. Screen format, I kept it on normal. Alright, for digital audio, you want to keep this on auto so you can bitstream, so that way you can have Dolby Atmos and DTS-X working correctly. So keep this on auto. A lot of these settings are self-explanatory, so I won't touch on all of them. Audio DRC, you want to keep that off. Okay, now we're on to the Bluetooth settings. This thing is kind of cool because you can pair Bluetooth headphones to it. All you have to do is turn on Bluetooth, make sure pairing is active on your headphones, and the player should automatically find it. Now when you're watching a movie, just hit the option button on the remote. Go to Bluetooth output and you can either have just Bluetooth or Bluetooth and HDMI active at the same time. This is just Bluetooth now with the headphones. Now this is Bluetooth to the headphones and sound from HDMI at the same time.
So what's the rush?
Oh, got to get down there and go through all the artifacts.
I know this can be a big deal for folks watching late at night or for those folks that have a hard time hearing. You can also use this feature for not only headphones but soundbars that have Bluetooth and for Bluetooth speakers. Okay, for the rest of the settings, I'm just going to speed through this. It's kind of easy to follow, so if you need to see something, just hit the pause button. If you have an older Sony X700 or 700 players, it's all the same stuff. Alright, let's check out the newest feature on the Mark II, which is Dolby Vision. The movie we have here is The Mortal Engines, and by looking at the package, it does indeed support Dolby Vision. Now when the movie is playing, just hit the display button on the remote and it'll bring up the disc information. You can see here it says HDR, and HDMI output says HDR, but we know this movie has Dolby Vision. So you've got to back out of the movie and go into the setup, go to screen settings and turn on Dolby Vision. Just be sure you have HDR output set to auto as well. Now go back into the movie and you should see the Dolby Vision logo up top if you've got a Sony TV. You might get something different depending on the brand of television you have. Now hit the display button again and the disc information should now read Dolby Vision, and the HDMI output will say Dolby Vision as well. And just a quick peek in the TV's picture settings does confirm it does work correctly. Now the question is, how do you know if your 4K Blu-ray has Dolby Vision if you haven't read the packaging? Well, you've got to be sure HDR output is on auto and keep Dolby Vision turned on. Bring up the disc info by hitting display and you should see it says HDR up top. If it just says HDR and not Dolby Vision up top, but says Dolby Vision for HDMI output, then the disc is not in Dolby Vision. If it says Dolby Vision in both parts, up top and below, then it's got Dolby Vision. This all seems like a big hassle, especially if you're not a real video enthusiast who checks for these things, because if you keep Dolby Vision turned on all the time, then every Blu-ray you watch that isn't Dolby Vision supported will be extremely bright and overblown. I'm hoping Sony can address this in a firmware update, but come on, you know they'll just make it right when they release the X900 or whatever new piece of hardware they drop. They're gonna need you to buy that new player, every year. But who knows, maybe they'll surprise us. Okay, now back to video settings. During playback, you can keep this on direct with no video processing of the image, or you can choose custom. Here you can apply a bunch of noise reduction settings along with brightness, contrast, color, and hue settings. Alright, now let's bounce on over to Netflix. Keep in mind that you will have to turn on Dolby Vision for shows that support it. The thing is, you won't know it supports Dolby Vision unless Dolby Vision is turned on. Take for instance Daredevil, which has both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Clearly Atmos isn't supported because it only says 5.1, and it doesn't say Dolby Vision, even though I know it does support Dolby Vision. So you gotta go turn DV back on, and now it should say Dolby Vision. A quick check in the TV settings does confirm it works. However, keeping Dolby Vision turned on will output every show in Dolby Vision regardless of support of the format. As for Netflix streaming quality, I found it to be just as good as what I think is the best streaming player, the Apple TV 4K. If it wasn't for the lack of Dolby Atmos, I really couldn't tell the difference between the two. Just a quick note that the Sony TV's built-in Netflix app supports both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Little odd that their player doesn't. Okay, now let's bounce on over to Amazon Prime. Prime indeed supports 4K and HDR, but no Dolby Vision or Dolby Atmos. Now if we check out the TV's Prime app, this one supports Dolby Vision, and again, no Dolby Atmos. Video quality now is decent with a little bit of color banding. I've never been a fan of Amazon streaming quality, as I've always noticed some compression issues on every device that I've tried. So I mean, at least they're consistently alright over every single device. The last app is YouTube. This is the LG 4K demo. It isn't 4K, but the app doesn't support HDR. Although the TV's YouTube app does. Streaming looked just okay. It's not the best, but it's your typical YouTube compressed quality. Alright, so there you have it. It's pretty much exactly the same as the original X800. It loads movies quickly and it's a quiet player. Obviously the main reason to pick this up is going to be for the Dolby Vision support, Oh, and it does support SACD and DVD audio playback for all you music lovers. Just like the X700, its Achilles heel is the fact that you have to manually turn Dolby Vision on for those Blu-rays and Netflix shows that are in the format. One thing I did notice, if you keep Dolby Vision always on, both disc playback and Netflix will always output Dolby Vision regardless if the content is in DV or not. Even if you're on the menus, it's still in Dolby Vision. But if you're in the Amazon Prime app or YouTube app, then the player can switch properly between standard HDR and non-HDR material. It's just that being inside the Netflix app or inside of a Blu-ray that you'll get constant Dolby Vision if the Dolby Vision toggle is turned on. With that being said, I was a little surprised that the apps on the player weren't exactly the same as Sony's own television apps. Atmos on the TV Netflix app, but not on the player. Dolby Vision on the Prime TV app, but not on the player. HDR on the YouTube TV's app, but not on the player. So if you've got a Sony TV, then I think it's best to stick with the inbuilt TV's apps. I'm sure this could be fixed with an update, but who knows if that's ever going to happen. Aside from those little issues, I think the Sony is still the best under $500 4K Blu-ray player to get, for Blu-ray playback that is. If you're going to stream, I'd say get an Apple TV. So if you were satisfied with the X800 and 700 players' video quality, I think you'll find this performs the same. Now the question is, do you upgrade if you already own the X800? Well, if you've got a Dolby Vision capable TV, then I think you might want to max out its capability and grab the X800M2. If you've got an X700 and don't need SACD or DVD audio support, then I think you'll be fine with the 700. Now, if you want to save up a little more spare change, I think for $500, the Panasonic UB820 is the player to get. I'll leave a link to that review at the end of this video. Well, alright guys, if you found this video useful, then hit that like button. It really does help out the channel if you give it a like. Leave us a comment and let us know if you'll be grabbing this player. I will leave some links down below if you do want to pick it up. Follow us on social media, and if you want to support the channel and get exclusive content and giveaways, then stop by our Patreon page. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you guys again in the next one.